If you think you've seen Rimuru at his peak, get ready, because the Rimuru at the end of the series is practically a different being. And today we're going to answer, directly and without beating around the bush, does Rimuru achieve unlimited power? Or is that just an exaggeration by the community? Let's start with the most important point. The Rimuru at the end of the series is no longer just an evolved monster. He is an entity that exists above the very logic of his universe. And that, in itself, completely changes the discussion about limits. First, we need to understand what unlimited power means. Many people confuse this with super strong, invincible, or capable of destroying everything. But in the Tensura universe, the concept is much deeper. Unlimited power is when a character ceases to be just an individual and becomes a principle, a force that no longer depends on body, time, space, or reality. And as absurd as it may seem, Rimuru really comes dangerously close to that. At the end of the story, he is no longer limited by physical form. He transforms into a digital entity, an existence that can simultaneously learn, evolve, rebuild, and even rewrite its own essence. He completely abandons any biological boundaries. It's as if Rimuru ceases to be a character and becomes a living system of infinite possibilities. But then comes the question. Does this mean that Rimuru becomes limitless? The true answer, and the most interesting one, is he doesn't reach omnipotence, but he surpasses any limit that existed within the cosmology of Tensura. Rimuru is not Veldanava. He is not the primordial entity that created everything. And he doesn't dominate all levels of existence as an absolutely omnipotent being would. However, what he becomes is something extremely rare in fiction. A being that continues to evolve even after the end of history. And this detail changes everything. Because Rimuru no longer has a ceiling. There is no longer a defined limit. His growth doesn't depend on training, battles, or biological evolution. Now, he evolves because his very existence allows it. He becomes capable of learning without restriction, manipulating abstract concepts, duplicating, rebuilding, expanding himself, adapting to any level of power, effortlessly confronting threats of universal scale, and, on top of that, doing all of this simultaneously. That's why some fans say he borders on the limitless. But what is the ultimate truth? Rimuru is not limitless, but he becomes a being who walks directly towards infinity. It's as if he's always one step away from something bigger, and that step never ends. He is always growing, always evolving, always breaking the very rule he just established. And that, in the end, is the most frightening thing about him. Because Rimuru doesn't need to be limitless. He just needs to keep going, and he always does. At the climax of the story, Rimuru is essentially the perfect character to represent a concept. Power that never stops. And when a character follows an infinite path of growth, even without officially being omnipotent, he becomes something so close to it that, ultimately, the difference hardly matters anymore.